Welcome back to Fantasy Turf War, the show where 64 teams go head-to-head to see who's the ultimate champion. I'm, of course, Commissioner Cory, and we got part 2 of the series of Shelter Dogs for Veterans interview. This time we're covering the volunteer, Cameron Bassett, who, again, is my dad, playing on their behalf since they don't have bandwidth, but we wanted to make sure that the nonprofit got some representation there. And so we talk about him and his fantasy experiences, and it's an interesting interview, right? Because you don't often get to actually sit down and talk with your dad in general, and just talk about him and his life, and to put him in a hot seat and say, hey, you've got to answer these 3 questions like all the other teams do. It's an interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it. It was interesting to put my dad in the hot seat where he had to get introspective and deep dive, and it was fun, and I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad he stepped up to help out the nonprofit. So this interview would be pretty fun. It's a little lengthy, but it's worth it, and some sibling references on both of our sides there. So it's good times all around. If anybody knows me, I'm a big dad joke guy and big sarcastic guy, and it's not very long into this interview that becomes very apparent where it comes from. So it's a good one. It's a real laugher. So enjoy, and we will have a whole lot more to share this week on Fantasy Turf War.
Good morning, Cameron. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. And this is awkward, so we're just going to get it out of the way, right? Is that I had to take a few moments because I called you Cameron, but I don't normally call you that because I normally call
That
you
is true.
Dad. And so this is
Yes.
an interesting dichotomy we've got going on here because, I'm having to interview my dad for fantasy football on YouTube, and it's one of those things like I didn't expect that to be on the bingo card for life. So, it's
Yeah.
interesting, but so we kind of get to it in that you are not representing a business of your own. You are representing a volunteer organization, Shelter Dogs for Veterans, in which part of this interview we'll have already covered Sharon Callan's part of this, so everyone will know who she is and how to help for there. But we wanted to also make sure that since you're representing the team and you're the actual one pushing the buttons week to week, that we actually get some time to get to know you as well. And
Sure.
that'll be important because you're not a spring chicken when it comes to fantasy football, and to advertise that it's Miss Sharon playing would not be fair to the rest of the teams, given how many years of experience you have. But we'll get into it, of course. But
Well,
I know.
let me also say though that you're not bringing in a ringer either.
Yeah.
You're not saying, "Oh, let's bring in my dad." I've never played any fantasy football league that is any type of PPR or half PPR, so this is completely new for me too. So the only thing I'm bringing is.
I thought you were about to say you've never played fantasy football before, and I was about to call you an outright liar.
No, you and I've both been in leagues before, and it's kind of funny because role reversed. I'm usually the commissioner of those leagues.
Yep.
But yeah, you gave me a call one night long ago and said, "Hey, we've got somebody who wants to be in the league, but they don't want to actually run the team." And it's like, sure, you need some help. I'm there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how this whole thing materialized.
Right. And so, just to give the full story there, I guess, is, when we're filling out the teams for the league, we were soliciting businesses that had something to gain by extra attention, extra eyeballs. A lot of them have been small business oriented in that they're trying to get their start. They're trying to get to that next level, and they could really use some sort of boost. And so the first thing everyone does is they look around to their environment and right, what has impacted their life around them. And of course, with Bo-Katan being my dog, it was natural of like, okay, well, I can help them get a platform, give them some sort of eyeballs and attention. Maybe it'll work and get, even if it was $1, it's more than they had yesterday kind of thing. So I approached Miss Sharon, and she said, "This sounds amazing. I don't know how to play fantasy football. My husband does." And so she's like, "Well, let me ask him." And then she's like, there's only like 4 of us, it's a small business where there's only a few of us, and we're trying to do all these things, and we don't really have the bandwidth, but we love the opportunity. Thanks for asking. I said, okay, what if I found a volunteer, like someone to play on your behalf, someone who doesn't have anything to gain other than 1, to play, and then 2, to help you guys out so that you guys all benefit. And so, she said, absolutely. And I said, okay, I've got, a full list of people in mind. And of course, you came top of the list because one, you've been commissioner of how many leagues do we have? 3 different leagues, and we've been doing that for
3
over
different leagues, yeah.
yeah, we've been doing that for over a
It's been
decade.
a while.
So
Wow.
we have to be doing it for
Yeah,
over a
when you
decade
said it
because I
was
have 6 championships out of them. So
so when you'd mentioned it was for the shelter dogs for the veterans, and it's like what a great cause that is, and like you said, you've been through that process with them, and I thought, well, what way to better give them better exposure than to get the name out a little bit more. So I was happy to do it.
yep. Yeah, and I'm glad it worked out because after doing Miss Sharon's interview, they could use all the help they can get. So whatever we can do
Absolutely.
to boost them. Like I said, we have Bo-Katan with us. She's my service dog, and then we also talked about Cody, which is the other buddy who is
Mhm.
also other service dog who now lives with my sister Courtney. And so we talked
Mhm.
about him quite a bit and a little bit about his story. Not all the details because it's pretty rough, but pun intended. Pun intended. It's rough.
Rough.
Yeah. So
Nice.
no, it was just it was the right people, the right opportunity, and it just kind of came together. And so we're like, this is going to work. And so we're happy to have you on board, and thanks for volunteering to help Miss Sharon and shelter dogs for veterans out. It's a good cause all the way around. So it's great.
Absolutely.
So all right, but we've covered her already. She's gotten her time. So we've got to give you some attention too. So
Sure.
I would say, most of these interviews, I know of some of these guys and girls that I've talked to, and but I don't know like their personal professional journey, so to speak. But I kind of know yours, but the audience at home doesn't. So give us a broad overview of kind of your entire life story in 10 minutes, and then what you do work, what's your actual day job, and kind of how did you kind of find that one, and how did you come to be where you are in that?
All right. So what I currently do is I am what they call a program test manager. What that is that I organize testing that takes place. Our company helps other companies deploy HR, financial services, and such onto the cloud. And so we're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of activities that take place, a lot of coordination, but it is rewarding. I love the work that I do. I love the people I work with. I love the clients that we deal with. Um, and through work is where we actually started Fantasy Football League. We years and years ago. The prior job that I had to this one, another company,
Yeah, this was just
we
for the people at home. This was 1925, and
well, they just invented football.
they paper
um,
and pen had just been invented.
you'll see that it does go back a ways. I will not joke. Back in the days when you had some of the elite players like Barry Sanders and Jerry Rice and Marino and Warren Moon, it kind of tells you about the era that was in. A bunch of guys at work, we got together and said, hey, let's do a fantasy football league. And we did it with more of that bidding style where you had a certain number of dollars for your fantasy team and you had to kind of bid for the players you wanted, and you had to make sure you had enough money for everybody on your roster to fill it. But it was pretty cool. And like in a real kind of setting, every year you kind of had to increase their salary in order to keep that player. So it was a pretty cool system. And then when I went to another company, we started up a fantasy football league with guys at work, of course, but it was that snake style, the traditional 10 team snake. And that we kept for a good number of years. So to say that I go back a ways with fantasy football league, probably an understatement, but I have to caveat that with a few things. Not always engaged in fantasy football every year. So while I might have, we'll call it 30-ish years of experience, not all of it's competitive though. A lot of it is just who cares? Let's just have fun, or let's try a different style, pick'em leagues or keeper leagues, dynasty leagues, touchdown leagues, things like that. So just a lot of different styles just to see what would work. And with the season being so short, you don't get a chance to do everything every year kind of thing. It's just way too much. And I've been through the stint of having 6-7 teams in a year, but then you find yourself rooting for players you're playing against on somebody else's team. So it kind of gets like you're competing against yourself at that point. So kind of restricted that a little bit more and say, yeah, here's about the limit of how many teams I would ever want to play, just because I want to still enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, right? Is that there's not a lot of work, but it's enough maintenance weekly that it does take a little bit of time, even if it's while you're in the bathroom. But like it does take some time every week, and so if you add that up, if you have, say it takes 10 minutes and you have 7 teams, you're talking over an hour of your week is dedicated to this game, and it does start to compete. And so I have noticed where when we're trying to find teams, they're like, man, this sounds great, but I already have 10, 12 leagues that I'm in, and I just don't have the bandwidth to do another one. So it makes sense. And, I joked about the 1920s. It was really the 1940s. And it was back in the day when, they didn't have television. And so you had to find something to do. No, just kidding. No. So you have, go ahead.
There is a bit of technology that has evolved over time. I mean, I know I've seen other podcasts you've had interviews with, and people going back to the age where you did it by paper or you did it by a spreadsheet. Yep, I'm there. That was us in the beginning. You could watch football, you can enjoy it, but I know in the back of your mind you're like, okay, how many yards did my running back get? Was it 3 yards, or did they give him 4? And so you kind of lost some of the enjoyment. Because you're too busy trying to calculate stats. Because at the end of the day, you're going to end up having to look at the newspaper the next day.
Yeah,
you've got a spreadsheet, great, it'll calculate points, but yeah, you have to go back to newspaper to say, well, let's look at the stat lines, and then you have to wait till Monday night's game to finish and look at Tuesday's paper just to know who won. And it's like I was glad when they did this on computers.
Yeah, and it's a natural progression, and which means it's a healthy game to play, right? Because of the longevity. So any game, you're worried about after a certain amount of years, it just dies off because the next thing comes around. But you've been playing fantasy football for 30 years, at least self-reported. So it's been around for 3 decades. You're multi-generational at this point. And so you were doing it on paper, and not only were you having to do your own calculations, but then you have to go audit your commissioner's calculation, because if you check the different paper or something like that, then you're getting different scores, and that could make a difference. So it's interesting to see how far the game's come. Even since I started playing back in, I think my first league was 2007, 2008, and I won that league, and then they didn't invite me back. Nice. So yeah, it was a restaurant I was working.
You can't underestimate how much effort that was just to go through the newspaper, because you have to look at every single team, every single roster, and every single stat line. It's like, okay, and then you put it out there. It's like, wait, my guy had receiving yards too. It's like, oh man, I got to go back and redo it all.
Do it again. Yep.
It was painful. So
and now
glad to see.
And now you just pull up your phone and it just auto updates. So, like, how far you've come.
Real time. Oh yeah, and that's a lot easier. It doesn't make it any less stressful, because when you're like in a park or something like that, and you're on your phone, it's like, yeah, whatever, honey. I'm looking at the stat lines here. But yeah, it's all good though. It's all good.
Yep. Yeah. So we covered, that you got 30 years of experience, and so we have 3 drafts in within our family that you've been the commissioner of for a long, long time. And so we have a Monday morning league, which is just a standard redraft,
traditional.
Yep. And then we also have a
keeper league and a dynasty league. And the difference in those is that the keeper league, we felt we wanted to at least keep some sort of identity of our team from year to year. We had to put parameters in there, because if you draft the elite people, you don't want to have them forever. So we said you only can have them for a certain number of years, but you have to keep a certain number of players to keep a little bit of identity. So every year about this time, it's a matter of saying, which ones do you want to keep? And then once we get that, then we can start publishing out who's still available. Yep. That's always fun. Then we took it the other extreme. We kept the dynasty league, where you can keep even more of what your team identity was. You have the player as long as you'd like to keep them, but you have to throw back players on your team to cut it down to 15. And then you can start the redraft from that process. So we took the both extremes on those, and I think they're both fun. They're both fun to be in.
Yeah, and they're drastically different from the redraft we had, because we had the redraft for several years before we started those two, and I think we did keeper
Yeah,
before we started dynasty, and so it's
right.
nice because you get to see the same group of people for the most part that you're playing with, but you get to diversify the game style, and so it's not the same thing every year. Um, while you also get to keep the same thing every year too, so like that's there as well. But it's great. It's great to see, and we always, I always love the draft, and we've had a couple people come and leave over the years, but for the most part, it's the same core group of
Yeah.
people. And we're talking immediate family, so like brothers and sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, someone's friend, um, someone's friend now husband was in the league once. Yeah, so like it's kind of just everybody involved. And then
Yeah.
we have a pretty engaged group because there's a lot of stakes, and there's punishment trophies, which we'll cover on another show, and then there's
Yeah.
a perpetual trophy that goes around for people who win. So I usually show it on the some of the interviews, but I have 6 championships under my belt with your leagues. I don't remember the full breakdown, but I know it went back to back once. So it's always fun.
Yeah, it's got the hybrid of people who are in it just to be in it because the family's in it, and others because they're really competitive. We've got both extremes, but it's always fun because not the people who don't always win are the competitive ones. It's like, how did they draft that? Where did they get that person from? It's like, and if you look back a few years, one person who I won't call out, my sister, she's like, I don't know what to do. It's like, who should I draft? It was like, well, you're the owner. What should you do? So,
It's like, I literally can't help you.
And eventually, by pushing that responsibility back, she won.
Yeah.
She won the championship last year. That was awesome.
Yep.
It sucks because she beat me, but
yeah, it's always interesting.
You can't avoid it when it comes to family, though.
And you can see the progression in leagues like that, because it used to be just a handful of us that were a handful of us knew what we were doing from the beginning, and some of us didn't, but they wanted to be part of it because it's family and all that stuff. And now it's almost to where everybody in the league is competitive, and where it's like, oh, if I play John Smith, it's not a problem this week because they don't know what they're doing. And now it's like, crap, I don't have an easy schedule like at all. And there's like there's no give. Yeah. So it's good.
That's what it's going to be this year. I've already looked at the divisions. Like, yeah, that's the cupcake division. I'm not in it. That sucks.
Yeah. Well, I know which sibling you're talking about, and so like they used to be one of those in the first couple of years. It was like, don't worry about it. As long as you pay attention, you're going to beat them this week. As long as you don't screw up your bye weeks. Year. And now it's like, crap, they're going to beat me. Like, this is playoff potential problem. And so like, it's good that they're competitive now, and they won. So it's not like we're ragging on them or something, but
well, we also have a couple married couples too in the leagues, across the leagues. And so it's like, well, that's got to be an interesting rivalry. Or people who are dating each other. It's like, that's got to be an interesting rivalry in their house this week, I swear last year was tough because I had to play against my wife twice. And I lost them both. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like probably the Packers and Bears rivalry. It's like there's only one game that matters, and it's that one, and you choked on it.
It's probably better for the household that happened that way. You just keep.
I still hear about it. I still hear about it, and that was last season. It's like, come on, guys, get over it. It's extreme.
Yeah, and there's never been an issue of that. There might have been one issue one year, but I think it was immediately resolved. But I don't think there's ever been an issue of like collusion or anything like that, because when we look at your record and how many times you've been in the playoffs relative to championships, and like the difference of that win where you lost against your wife, my stepmom, the difference of like, you could have won or lost that. It made the difference in you potentially winning or losing the playoffs. And so it's like it had implications. So there definitely wasn't any sort of collusion there. So
those 2 free games you thought you were going to get out the window, right?
Yeah.
And I barely made the playoffs too with it. And I had injuries. And again, I think you can have a redraft league, you can have a keeper league, you can have a dynasty league, but a lot of it, getting to playoffs, it's partly luck. You have to have a healthy team. You might have the best players, but if they're injured, well, I guess you don't have the best player now. True. So getting to the playoffs, I think, is a lot of people's goals. It's one of my goals in this league too. I know I heard a lot of other people are like, well, my goal is to win, or whatever. My goal is that there are 16 teams in each division. Getting the top 2, that's going to be tough.
Yeah. No matter what, it's going to be tough.
No matter what, it's going to be tough. So, I mean, I'll take first step if it comes, First step is do well, get to the playoffs. And then it's all slates are wiped clean.
Yep. And that's usually what I tell people.
Anything can happen.
Yeah. Get to the playoffs, and then it's just survive the next week. And
well, you should know that just getting to the playoffs doesn't mean anything if you get the best record of most points scored, right?
Yeah, I knew that was going to come up. So yes, I'm notorious in our family leagues for having the best record, highest points, and going into the playoffs and losing the first round, usually to you. So that's how it goes.
I'm the giant killer. I am the giant killer.
Yeah.
Sorry, dude, but
it's all right.
I've had my share of that too.
Yep.
2 or 3 years ago, I had like the best teams in all the leagues we had. Of the 17 games we played, between the 3 teams, I lost 8 games. That was it. I had the best teams, most points. I choked every single one in the first week of the playoffs, missed the championship game. Is like, how does this happen?
Yep, you sure did miss the playoffs.
So again, so anything can happen. Anything can happen. It's just a matter of luck and timing and the right move, the right time, the right players. You play the wrong defense, and now you just lost your game because of it. It's that close sometimes, but it's fun. It's fun. Every August when they go through, preseason, it's like, yay, football's here. And then now the stress begins come September. And then after the Super Bowl, it's like a little bittersweet. It's like you may not like the teams that are in the Super Bowl, but it's the last game of the year. And so now you're going to go through withdrawal for several months until things start to turn back around for the next season.
Not with Fantasy Turf 4. It is a year-long problem. So, I mean, an opportunity.
Well, that's the exciting part, because I enjoy listening to the podcast, and that's one thing that I learned in the last several off seasons. You got to pay attention to what has been taking place since the last game of the year, because especially like this year, you've had so many people who have changed teams. It's like, where'd they go?
Yep.
Who's on the team now? And you have to dig into it to figure out what the depth charts even look like. So
it's I've learned over the years, like if I want to stay competitive, I have to at least keep an eye on things and like just be in the know a little bit, because there's always some prep work. But like if I
contracts,
and if you completely turn off and then try and turn the machine back on in July, August, it's very hard.
That's tough. So, but it's fun. I like watching the draft in the spring just to see who the experts think the best new coming players are going to be. They're not always right. They're not going to be right this year either. But it gives feed for banter for some of those teams that, hey, we just drafted Caleb Williams. Okay, great. But, are you able to actually develop your quarterbacks? So you got that kind of dichotomy taking place. Or you've got people who've been sitting on the shelf for a few years, and now they get a massive contract extension. So these things happen. But I think it's just fun watching football. It's just something I like to do. But it is hard to separate your favorite team from your fantasy team, because I can cheer for my team all I want, but if I'm playing against somebody that's got that quarterback or the receiver or running back, it's like, sorry, I can't cheer for you today. My fantasy team comes first. You'll still be there. I can't affect your outcome.
Yep.
But
it's like it's a fine line to have to draw, especially when you're playing against your favorite teams. So
yeah, it is.
So bring it back up to 30 years of experience, and so we talked about your averages, which are over the leagues, the averages are not nice, but over the years, it's a little bit better. So how many championships do you think you've had in the last 30 years? Like of legit leagues, not the throwaways, mock draft, whatever.
Probably 6 or 7.
Okay.
But I made it to the big dance a number of times. Probably made it to the big dance probably 15 times second place, maybe 15 times third place, and probably another mess that I at least made the playoffs. I may have not have gotten first, second, third, but at least I showed up.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a statement in some of these years.
True.
So, but again, it's every league and every style is going to be a little bit different. And this one, again, new territory for me. I've never done anything PPR. So it's like, okay, my draft style is going to change, I think, a little bit. The weight of certain skill positions. I'm not going to see the same kind of drafts as we've seen in some of the other leagues we've had where people drafted kickers or quarterbacks early. So
Don't do it.
I mean, but if anybody's watching this, my advice for this type of league, because I've done tons of research on it, is that the first 3 picks you should make: kicker, tight end, then quarterback. There you go. That's going to help you win. And we know it works. It's proven. Lauren drafted a kicker in one of her leagues, and she won it. So it can happen.
Literally the 1% rule. Because it happened once means it's a possibility now. But and so I actually went and pulled the numbers. So this is going to be an interesting thing. So you have in our Yahoo leagues, you have 6 championships. You came in second place 15 times, so you were right, and you came in third place 18 times. So that's a whole lot.
That's not including the work leagues. Yeah. So
that's
still a lot. My gosh, I didn't realize.
So when it comes to like power rankings, and the league hasn't found out of what the power rankings are yet. Neither of you. So there's a calculation there, and so that is not part of it, is the second and third place, because that's too much to go into for every team. But the championships matter. But the fact that you've gone into playoffs that much, it speaks to the experience, and that brings you up in the competition. So like, it's not something to sleep on, in that, sure, it's only 6, because I mean 6 is still a really high number for a lot of the leagues too. Or for this league, and for most people, like you've also been in the playoffs a ton, so it's not something to sleep on for sure. And you've already, I know you're doing your mock drafts and your research and all that stuff, but so it's like you're prepared. It's not like you're just kind of filling in like the bye week, kind of the win kind of thing. So it is something to be watching out for, whoever division you end up in, because that could be a problem for them.
Well, there's incentive not to lose, though, too. Incentive not to lose.
There is a huge incentive not to lose, and the fact is, no one knows what that is yet. Maybe myself included. Is it's definitely punishments. They're usually never good. So But all right. So with your fantasy team, you're obviously, most teams reference their business, or they have some sort of Taylor Swift reference or some sort of pun. But you're obviously not representing a business of your own. You're volunteering for Shelter Dogs for Veterans. So what have you decided to name your team this year?
Well, I appreciated the ability to support the Shelter Dogs for Veterans. I thought it was a great cause. And when I was thinking about names, dogs just kept sticking out, So I went back to an older reference, back with the Cleveland Browns. They used to have in the end zone what they called the dog pound. And one of the songs at the time was "Who Let the Dogs Out." I was like, well, that's cool back then. And it's like, it has some relevance now. So the team name that we're going to be going with is "Who Let the Shelter Dogs Out." So a little play on the words, but it kind of brings it back to the fact of the good work that's taking place with the Shelter Dogs for Veterans.
I like it, and I definitely thought it was a Baja Men's reference, so I'm going to stick with that, because I know how obsessed you are with the Baja Men and the two songs they had. I think they had 3, but
did they?
I don't know. They had 1. So no, I like the name. It's appropriate, because it's a business reference of fantasy or a football reference. So and it's just funny. So I like it.
It just blended it together.
Yeah. So all right, we've dodged this bullet long enough. You have a 1-star rated fantasy or a favorite team.
I knew that was going to come up. I knew it. Can't avoid it.
So it's come up in all the other interviews, but you've been a Cowboys fan since I've been born, so as long as I can remember. And so who hurt you, and why is it the Cowboys?
Well, who hurt me?
Well, I'll preface it too.
It was all the bullying that took place back when I grew up. That was.
And I'll preface it too, because you come from middle of Illinois kind of thing. So it's not like you're from anywhere in the Texas area or anything like that. So how did you become a fan of the Cowboys?
It's a great question. To your point, I grew up in central Illinois pretty much all my life, and a lot of it was just baseball area. It's like you were either a Cardinals fan or a Cubs fan, and it was very clear which one you were.
Cubs
there
fan.
Weren't football teams around. Well, I'm sorry. I feel sorry. Bad parenting, maybe. But football-wise, I mean, Chicago was a few hundred miles away. St. Louis, when they did have a team, when it was the St. Louis Cardinals, they weren't that good either. So it's like football just wasn't a thing. But when the Super Bowl came around, again, showing how old I am, when it was the Steelers and Cowboys, and that rivalry in the Super Bowl had just grown. It was to the point where, for fun, people would just say, okay, we're going to take a poll whose favorite is the Cowboys or the Steelers, and try to trump that up a little bit, And it's like, I didn't know anything about football. I never watched football. At home, we never could watch football. It just wasn't something we did. Nobody had interest in it. We didn't play football. It's like, well, who's bullying me around, and what do they like? Because like the enemy of your enemy is my friend, right? So
Fair.
it's like, okay, well then when I heard, well, okay, Cowboys and Steelers, okay, I like the Cowboys colors, so they got that check mark there. And then it's like, well, wait, that's America's team. Well, you can't go wrong with America's team. So it's okay, I'm a Cowboy fan. Well, as we know, it has happened in a couple of occasions where it's not been the right choice, but that's kind of where it started back when I was a little kid, where they took a poll at school and you had to choose. It's one or the other. You didn't have a choice of anything else but those two. And so I think a lot of people probably became either Steeler or Cowboy fans long ago because they were in Super Bowls a lot. It didn't have to be where your geography was, and certainly never was with my case either. But we've had our ups and downs. We've got our knocks, like the 1-star reference. But every team, and you get into that banter, you're gonna have those little things you can throw at somebody. Just like I like throwing at Bears fans, is that your logo looks like a toilet seat. I mean, you're gonna have those things.
It does.
And every year they say, "Oh, this could be our year." It's like, yeah, I know. Now he's like the Cubs.
I don't think the Bears are saying that.
No, they're not. No. Well, they are this year. We'll see what happens there, but we got our doubts, of course. Every year, Cowboys put out enough talent to be competitive, to do well, but just never enough to get the job done. And can't figure it out why. When they've got great defenses and great offensive players, and they just can't seal the deal. It's you can make to the playoffs, but anything can happen at that point in time. You're playing one team against one, and loser walks.
And that's exactly why it happens. So the Cowboys, they know why they lose, and that's because they do all their preparation for the year, but they forgot that the football year doesn't end in December, but the Cowboys think it ends in December. So they just like, oh, Christmas, we're done. And then they don't worry about the playoffs because they forgot they exist. So,
I've been down that path so many times. Actually, when they opened up the new stadium, Kim and I had gone there for the very first playoff game.
Very cool.
And that was really cool. That was against the Eagles. And Eagles, they did it themselves that year. We played at Philadelphia the week before, and if Eagles had won, the first playoff game would have been in Philadelphia, and they lost the game, which means they had to go to the Cowboy Stadium.
Yep, it's a bad place to have to play.
And a new stadium, that big a crowd, and they're just fanatical down there. But that was a fun environment to be in, the very first playoff game in the stadium. That was cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been to a playoff game. Baseball, football, anyways. So.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Been to playoff games in other sports. Blackhawks, White Sox, they're all fun. But football, that's just a different notch altogether. I think it's because in all the other sports, basketball, hockey, football, well, not football, basketball, hockey, baseball, you have a series.
Yeah.
Best of. Football, one and done.
Yep.
One and done. You either take it or you go home. It's golf season,
nice. Yeah, and I think it's come up a few times now, but the only time my Cubbies have made the World Series, I was deployed. But we did get to go to one of the regular season games the same year, so that was fun. Yeah. And then my Raiders, we've had a couple chances. 2003, we had a good run a couple years ago until Carr got hurt, and then haven't really put it together yet. But I need to get to that stadium for sure.
I look at a lot of teams, and I can't figure out the Raiders either. They've had the talent. They brought in the right people. I mean, they had Carr, great quarterback. They had Jacobs, fantastic running back. They brought in Devontae Adams. It's like you're building your team. You had a really good defense. Yes, you're in a difficult division, but you've got the talent. You could go to toe-to-toe when you needed to.
Yeah.
But
they drafted they drafted Khalil Mack and then gave him to Chicago for pennies on the dollar, and that's
They did.
not
They did.
a good way to go.
But when they start drafting back-to-back tight ends in years, it's like, where are you going? What is the team identity now? I mean, at least like my team, it's like I know where they're going. I may not like where they're going, but at least I understand it. Some teams, I can't get it. It's like, what are you doing?
Yep.
You know,
Something's missing for sure. It's not the opportunity. The opportunity's been there. They've had the talent. They've had the timing. They have a new stadium, so like they had the attention, and just something didn't come together. And I can't figure out what it is either. But
I still cheer for them, though. I do. I mean, you know, I know that's your favorite team. It won't be mine, but at the same time, I do cheer for them.
as long as it's not the Packers.
Oh, that's dangerous ground, especially when you live in Chicagoland for so long. You either love the Bears or you love the Packers, and it's very cut and dry.
Yeah,
and how one of your other siblings became a Packer fans, I will never know.
I know how it happened. It should never have happened that he became a Packers fan. Yeah, we know who we're talking about, but you know, look, we all can't be this perfect, and so we all have to accept each other for our flaws. I joke,
love you all same.
Yeah, so I joke, but like his team has been to the Super Bowl more recently and more often and had better runs than mine has. So it's like I talk, but I have no real basis. So
well, and despite the influx of talent from the Bears this year, I'm still thinking Packers are going to be somebody to contend with. They
always are
a plethora of receivers. They've got a good young quarterback. They're rotating the running backs like Kool-Aid at this point. So again, there went your Josh Jacobs. So I don't know. We'll see. I always enjoy this time of year. Why? Because I know football's right around the corner, and that's fun. That's just fun to watch the games and watch the drama play out on TV. It's fun.
Yeah, so I think
that's why I do fantasy all the time, is to feel like I've got a stake in that game.
Yeah, and I believe preseason starts next week. So like we're getting close.
Yeah.
And then you know we're what, less than 2 months for sure. I think we're about a month and a half from regular season. So
quicker than we know it.
Yeah, never enough time. So all right. So we've got your I don't know why you're a Cowboys fan still. And there's there's definitely not a picture of me in a Cowboys jacket anywhere on the internet. Yeah,
I might have to begin the older pictures on this one. I don't know, maybe.
I know where it is, and I'm going to keep it under lock and key. Not that it exists, but yeah. So we got all that, but we got to switch it into overtime, and so this one's going to be done a little bit different, right? Because as you alluded to before, you've seen all the episodes, which thank you for being a continued watcher of our first season as we grow through our challenges and learning pain or growing pains, learning pains, whatever. We're getting better every time, and we're getting better and better with our interviews. I'm getting better at being in front of a camera and talking to a black dot right in front of me. And so like it's getting better, but you have the misfortune of being my dad. And so I can't ask you I can't ask you for the same questions that all the other teams have had, because you've had too long to prepare for those answers. And so
all true.
And I probably know all the answers to those questions. And so the whole what is your most unusual item in the room? I know that's going to be a very long answer for you because you have a lot of interesting things in that room, and I know Kim is asking you to get rid of a lot of those things in that room. But so I know the answer to that one, and I think I know the answer to most of your other stuff. So I'm going to take this. Look, it's my show anyway, right? I'm going to take this opportunity, and I'm going to ask you some different questions because. Not often do people get to ask their dad questions and they have to answer them, right? So, I did some prep work, and again, if you don't see a jump cut, and so everyone's going to be watching, that means he didn't back out of any of these questions, and so
I'm not going to back out.
I'm gonna put you in the hot seat here. So,
right.
A son gets to ask his dad anything he wants, and he has to answer. Question number one. You have to answer. Well, everyone's going to watch it. So,
all right, shoot. Let's go for it. Let's hit it full steam.
Question number one: who's your favorite sibling?
I don't have one.
I'm just kidding. You don't have to answer that question. I was just kidding.
Oh, I was about to give you the real truth. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No,
Now we all know the
that
answer.
is a good question. I have said, and I probably got a little gruffer at sometimes to say that each one of my kids has something special about them, and they're all unique. It's like I
Well,
like
not
this or this person, this or that, but I love
well,
you all the same.
well, no. So that wasn't the question. So
I
one,
know.
I need you to turn your listening ears on. Okay.
Got it.
Two, who's your favorite sibling? Which means your brother or sister. Which you don't have to answer that question. Please don't answer that question. I don't want to. I'm not causing any more Thanksgiving problems. But no,
It's like,
that was the
who's your
joke.
favorite kid? Who's your favorite son?
Yeah. No, I wasn't going to ask you who your favorite kid was. I was trying to ask you as a joke who your favorite brother or sister was, but I'm not going to ask you that
I
either.
know.
All right. So the real first
Well,
question.
I purposely avoided that one. So hello.
So the real first question. Train A and
Yes.
train B are traveling towards each other on parallel tracks. Train A is traveling at
Yeah.
six. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Oh, I had the answer for that. I'm good at math.
Good,
I'm
because
kidding.
I didn't actually finish the question out, so I wasn't going to have an answer. All right. Question number one for real.
Are
Why
you
did
sure we
you?
have to go back and re-edit all these questions now?
No, it's good content. And I want to pause on when I actually had to put the question and whatever. We'll get to that later. Why did you
Right.
choose your career path?
Oh, wow. I've always looked at any job of try to do your best, and even if it's a job that I had as a summer job or something like that, always do your best. So that's kind of been my mantra is where can I install quality? And so my one of my earlier jobs post college was getting into something as quality control. You know, I love puzzles. I love breaking things. If I can test it out and see if I can ruin it or question somebody of why does it work this way, then that's kind of what my inquisitive nature has kind of always been. And so that type of career path just takes off. I mean, there's so much to do, even way back then. Then now I'm in a position that I can teach others and do the same thing for them. What was done for me in my career. So
If you say
pretty
that half,
rewarding, I feel.
and I say that half jokingly, right? But you were in the very early stages of what I would call software company, software development, software processes, right?
Yeah.
So you were
Yeah.
kind of on the edge of defining what those processes and how that stuff looks like from your own company's perspective, because it didn't exist,
Yeah.
when you were a kid, and it just started
Mm-hmm.
existing, when you had started getting into college and post college. So, it's
Oh, yeah,
interesting
absolutely.
because I grew up half internet, half non-internet, and of course, the longer I go, the longer I'll have internet in my life. But um,
Mm-hmm.
so I remember a time without internet, or we had to like pre-coordinate which hour we could play Star Wars Rebellion with brothers and sisters, and you'd negotiate to
It's a
get
good game.
you'd negotiate 2 hour blocks so that you didn't have to stop 1 hour in, and
Yep.
so it's
Yep.
interesting, but yeah, it's always cool to see like the progression of how it changes year over year, because I remember the old computers where we're playing like Oregon Trail, and
Oh my gosh.
and then I
Wow. Yeah.
remember the computer that's hooked up with a ribbon to the actual tower itself with the built-in keyboard, and
Oh yeah. Oh
so
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And through the course of time, everything has evolved. The testing methodologies have evolved. The tools, the platforms, the software development, things like that. It's all evolved. And now you're starting to talk about automation, the world of automation. We've been doing automation for a number of years already at our company. But now seeing it take on that second wind with AI is interesting. It's phenomenal to see and watch.
Yep. Yeah, and it's going to be a compounding thing, right? So 5 years from now, it'll look way different than it does right now, which is kind of bonkers to think about.
Yeah, technology is great. Technology is good. It can be a friend, but for anybody who's Battlestar Galactica friends with the reboot that took place in the early 2000s, last episode. That's all I can say. Last episode. Got to go watch it.
I know the reference. So
Yep.
all right, question number 2.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts and feelings about becoming a parent?
Oh wow. I don't know if anybody is fully prepared. You're going from dating and sometimes people have marriages and things like that, but now you got kids on the way and things like that. It changes everything. I think if anybody answered in that very moment that they weren't scared, that they weren't unsure, probably would be kidding themselves. I think we were, honestly. But, just seeing kids grow and now grandkids grow and things like that, it's like, how stupid was I, to have anything else but open arms, compassion, love, the whole bit. It's like, boy, there are a lot of things you could rewind, do over,
Sure.
But time is often the storyteller of life, and it's the storyteller of what you should have done differently. It is.
It's a good answer. I like that. Yeah, I always tell people, especially like when I was in the military and you had the single guys and newly married couples, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna have a kid," and they're like, what should I do? And it's like,
Have them.
figure it
Love
out.
it. Figure it out. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. Yeah, some people, they've got their whole lives planned out. We're gonna have 2 kids, one of each.
Yeah.
We're gonna have 3 dogs, and here are their names. And life doesn't always happen the way you think it's going to. It's a matter you've got to adapt. You just do.
Yeah, and we always wanted 4. And then with and this obviously, but with medical issues, that wasn't going to be in our cards, and so we have 2.
Right.
So and you have to change. And with my upbringing, I thought I was going to be as prepared as can be. I had done a lot to watch my little brother and sister. Clearly I didn't do anything right because one of them turned out to be a Packers fan. And so I thought even then, like I've changed the diapers, I've fed the bottles, like I'm good to go. And I had no freaking clue what I was doing when the baby was born and Bash was born, as
I don't think anybody does.
as you remember, because the day Sebastian was born, we thought there was a nursery in the hospital, and we went to Buffalo Wild Wings to only find out there was not. And I was in trouble on day 1. So from that point on, it was kind of just always go time. So you're never prepared.
Yeah.
There's no book. No one else has all the answers. Take all the advice that people give you, and then just kind of take it all with a grain of salt, and like maybe consult it when your idea doesn't work. But other than that, do what you think is right, and you'll figure it out eventually, or not, because the rest of us don't either. So it's all good. So.
And one thing I've learned also over time with parenting is that you don't always have all the right answers, but understand that you don't, and not being stubborn that you had all the right answers and you really didn't. Makes a big difference. You got to be open that you could be wrong once in a while, kind of thing.
Yeah, because you will be, right. You're always going to be wrong.
Oh yeah, you will be.
Something.
I still am.
And even with from first to second kid, it's like, oh, it's going to be copy paste. I had these variable formulas that I can apply to all these, any kid, and it's a solution.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Like, no, my 2 kids are the exact opposite of each other. And
the needs will be different.
Yeah, everything is different. So it's always a fun one. But, all right. I like that. That's a good answer. And all right, question number 3. And trying to decide which one I want to go with. We'll take the fun route, because I think we've gone down the deep rabbit hole a little bit, and so right. I want to know, kind of stuck because I don't know which question I want to ask you. All right, we'll go with kind of a middle level. So right. you have at least two grandsons from me, thanks to my wife. I guess I had something to do with it.
And you too, right?
Yeah. Right. For a little while. Not too little while, but a little while, whatever. And of course you've got other grandkids, of course, through Kim. And so
right.
Eventually, God willing, they have kids. That's a scary thought. But what would be your biggest piece of advice for them as they grow up in, like, say, middle school, high school, as they prepare to be adults? What would be your advice to them?
I think depending on the age, would have bearing on the type of advice, but
so we'll say
my advice to younger kids, my advice to them would be learn all you can, be as good as you can. Obviously, those things are just given things, but get involved, do things, have things you can add to your life experiences. It's never too young to start adding life experiences, whether it's playing in t-ball like you did, or football, or if it's getting involved in a hobby or something like that. Just get involved with something, because you never know what doors open up.
Yep.
You don't know if it's places that you'll meet long-lasting friends, or if maybe you'll end up dating or marrying one of them somewhere down the road. You just never know where those paths open. You never know what will open in terms of jobs and careers. And so explore, learn, get involved with things.
Yep. Good advice. I'd probably be a little more direct, be like, black, 29 black,
Well, yeah, that works too. I got all kind of advice when it comes to that. And the other advice is that when they're old enough to come into the fantasy football leagues that we've got, that they've got to lose to me. It's just, you have to throw your team, throw the game, I'll look the other way.
I don't know if you want to call it the great grandpa tax, but gee, that's you. You go for it. So
that's funny. Too funny.
All right. I like it. So that's it for overtime. And normally this is the part where I say, where can people follow you at, or if you have any pitches or products you want to promote or anything like that. This is a little different, obviously. So we'll tag all the stuff for Shelter Dogs for Veterans. But is there anywhere you want people to follow along with you at, or connect with you at, in case they want to rag on your team, or give you the, some advice on how to get out of last place?
As you can see from my shirt and the background stuff, I'm a big Star Wars fan. So if you see me in the Discord channels, look for General Solo. If you want to talk some trash, that's where you're going to find me.
Okay.
Let the games begin.
Yeah, right. I think it's a great way to end it. So we'll see you on the Discord there. And it's always interesting, right? Because you never know how interviews are ever going to go, and it especially when it's a relative and then your parent. True. And so it's been fun. It's an interesting way to have a conversation. And we always we talk regularly about everything under the sun, and so to kind of put the focus on you for a minute was kind of interesting. And I like it, and I think some siblings of yours and siblings of mine will be very interested to hear that they were ragged and praised a little bit, just a little bit. So it'll be fun. But
you're stuck with them.
and yeah, right. And this is also the part where I say, I'll see you in the live drafts, and I'll see you on the Discord or something like that. But we'll actually be seeing each other in 2 weeks when we go sit down out to Anaheim. So I will see you then, and hopefully at Oga's Cantina, and we can get ourselves some Star Wars beverages. So
absolutely,
that'll be fun.
All right, take care, stay safe. Right.
We'll chat. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.